Droughts and fires, melting ice caps, disappearing glaciers, unpredictable and extreme weather and temperatures. This is climate change. Since 1992, delegates to the United Nations Convention on Climate Change could not limit the pollution and warming of the Earth's atmosphere and oceans. The 2015 Climate Summit in Paris ended with a voluntary world agreement to limit average warming to 2 degrees Celsius, or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Denying the climate problem, newly elected President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement. In the third hottest year on record, there would be no official U.S. delegation to the 2017 meeting. That annual meeting, called a Conference of the Parties, was organized by the island nation of Fiji, an archipelago of more than 330 islands. But because Fiji could not support the 20,000 people expected, COP23 was held in Bonn, Germany. The Pacific Islanders brought awareness of the emergency situation of small islands faced with rising seas and ever stronger storms. In their Declaration on Climate Change, delegates from 12 Pacific Island nations declared, for more than 2 decades, negotiations have failed to deliver the action required to protect our homes. We, the Pacific Climate Warriors, on behalf of the communities we are from, call for more ambitious action on climate change from our world leaders. We are not drowning. We're fighting. In the days before the World Conference started, German progressive parties, unions, and others organized an international People's Climate Summit. In workshops and discussions, activists exchanged information and strategies for change. A main focus for German climate activists was coal. For an enormous open-pit coal mine, like a lunar landscape, is still being expanded just north of Bonn. Local power plants burning the soft lignite or brown coal make this the largest source of CO2 pollution in Europe. Many villages, several highways, and most of an historic forest have been destroyed to make way for huge excavators. This home is in one of 24 villages being destroyed by the utility RWE for expansion of the Garzweiler mine. Local villagers are not consulted or included in any of the resettlement committees. The activist group Ende Gelände, Here and No Further, opposes the mining with well-planned, nonviolent direct actions.
Standing together in solidarity to call for an end of the age of fossil fuels. Governments won't act despite what they're going to tell in COP23 into the next stage. We know the climate policy in Germany looks like this.
On Saturday, November 4th, 25,000 people marched and rallied against coal in the largest climate protest yet in Germany. A delegate from Senegal spoke at the closing rally.
I come from far away to bring a message of peace, but also a message of anger. In a very near future, you will see Africa without Africans. If solutions are not taken now, not tomorrow, the impacts of climate change in Africa are so drastic that the livelihoods of many populations are jeopardized continually. Millions of people, young, women and men, are dying.
Of the artistic contributions in Bonn on climate issues, I was especially impressed with Unbearable, a project by Danish artist Jens Galschiot and the World Wildlife Fund.
We have a big polar bear sculpture called Unbearable, which is a real-size polar bear in copper that is impaled by a graph over CO2 emission, man-made CO2 emission. And then we have a polar bear army, 10 polar bears that are come down here to force the politicians to make a better deal. And we have the Statue of Liberty here, which is modified a little bit so it smokes out the torch and the freedom to pollute. We also brought Trump to carry it along in the demo with the polar bears to tell the world how he feels about the climate and the responsibility he thinks the Americans don't have. The world still keep on pouring out CO2, so actually we have to add another 27 centimeters to it to update it.
Yes, this is the level of CO2 in the air in 2015 when we put it up in Paris. And since this is the level of 2017. And when we're meeting in Paris again in 2020, where the discussion then is high like here. So this is a really scary thing.
The U.S. Climate Action Center, a large inflated dome funded by donors like Michael Bloomberg. Their slogan, "We are still in," meaning we still support the Paris Agreement. At the center's opening, a people's delegation featured activist reports from across the country, Puerto Rico, and beyond. Among the powerful speakers was Dr. Katia Aviles Vasquez from the Puerto Rican Organization for Ecological Agriculture.
While Trump threw paper towels at us, we took machetes in hand and we opened up the spaces, collective spaces like El Llamado, and we took up our long-standing traditions of mutual help. But it's not only effective to address the results of climate change, not just talking about just transition anymore. How do we recover in the now the effects that climate change is having, the lives it has taken today, the lives it took last month, the month before, the lives it's going to ruin in the coming months? How do we address that? We need to recognize the first cause of everything, and that is the systemic and systematic racism that imposes on our oppressed bodies the results and the impact of climate change. Secondly, we demand that those small local elites and Trump cronies and donors eliminate the Puerto Rico debt. We want to trade, we want to heal, and we want to work with our sister islands. So we demand an end to the colonial rule and the Jones Act that prohibits us from sharing with our sisters. We want control over our territories again, and we want to heal with ourselves again. We are not lazy, we are not waiting for the jobs, like Trump said, waiting for the handout. We have taken it upon ourselves to rebuild our country, to rebuild our soil. And not only that, we are offering all of you the solutions to be able to get out of this place, to be able to recover when it hits you too, and to recover together. One of the things we're saying is that we propose a just transition, just recuperation, so that we all know petroleum, fossil fuel emissions are the cause of this. No false solutions. We need to leave it on the ground. We need to stop now our fossil fuel addiction. And our most important tool is our culture, our traditions, and agroecology. Being able to work and subsidize, give money, not to Monsanto, not to the biotech, not to climate smart agriculture. We need to give that money to the people that are cooling the planet and feeding our children healthy food. Lastly, we want to tell the US government that we demand now for the lives lost and the lives ruined, we demand reparations. To Trump, we say, you follow our example or you get out of our way, because we're gonna keep walking, and we're gonna keep walking with all those countries, leaders, COP23, all the other grassroots movements that are here with us, that are smart enough to understand the problem, and that are brave enough to embrace how to implement the solution.
My name is Kathy Kidman-Pikinan, and I'm from the Marshall Islands. This is my cousin Nilan Loya, also from the Marshall Islands, and we're with the 350 Pacific Climate Warriors. We are one of the low-lying atoll nations that are on the front lines of climate change. We're only 2 meters above sea level, and so our island is one of those that are set to disappear with the rising sea level. We also have a relationship with the U.S. in that after World War II, the U.S. tested over 60 nuclear weapons on our islands, leaving most of our islands uninhabitable, irradiated, and leaving us with cancers. In middle school, I was a butterfly thief. I saw caterpillars rolled into cocoons from the bushes outside our classrooms. I nestled them into leaves on top of my desk across from the bunk bed, and a few weeks later, I woke to a morning light of trembling butterflies. I read recently that 40% of pollinator species, this includes butterflies and bees, are facing extinction. One of the key causes, climate change. Unusually warm winters force plants to shift their schedules so that when a bee comes out of hibernation, the flowers it normally feeds on has already bloomed and died. I came across a cartoon that showed a bumblebee cute, tubby, and smiling with a little cartoon bubble above its head that read, "If we die, we're taking you with us." I looked at that and thought, might as well put a Marshallese face over that bumblebee. Because if our island drowns out due to the rising sea level, just who do you think will be next? I'm taking you with me. Another contributing factor to the decline of bees and butterflies are pesticides. For bees, the pesticides cloud their vision so that they lose their way and die before they reach their home. How many of us will die before we get to go home? We'll take a boat to an island that was once whole, now reduced to sand and stone. Some stories say our ancestors came from volcano stone, a basalt rock goddess rooted in reef. Today I keep a basalt rock on my bookshelf. What tokens of our land shall we, will we store inside ourselves, inside our honeycomb of chest bones, the buzzing of a shore long gone? I'm taking you with me. A few months ago, my newsfeed erupted with the announcement that former CEO of ExxonMobil, Rex Tillerson, was named Secretary of State by U.S. President Donald Trump. ExxonMobil knew of climate change since 1981, but decided to fund climate deniers for the next 27 years. So whose colony is it collapsing today? Is it really just the bees, or is it also the human race funding our world to be washed into the sea? Trust, I'm taking you with me. A few years ago, my cousin and I took a boat to Kalalan Island, where a man took my hand and swears he was waiting for me. He points to an island that a few years ago was lush, full of pandanus trees and coconut trees. He says, what's dead is dead. You can't save this one, but you gotta save the others. The Prime Minister of Tuvalu was quoted as saying, if you save Tuvalu, you save the world. But what if we don't save Tuvalu? What if bees and butterflies become extinct? What if our islands don't survive? Just who do you think will be next? I'm taking you with me. I'm taking you with me. I'm taking you with me. Thank you.
Why we say system change, not climate change. We need an economic system based on conservation and local renewable energy, rejecting endless growth fueled by fossil and nuclear energy, hydrofracking, industrial agriculture, and extraction of natural resources at great social and ecological costs. We want more democracy, full representation for all, and legal rights for indigenous and endangered communities, women and children, and the natural world that cannot speak for itself. And finally, an end to the costly, deadly, polluting wars our country is involved in, many of these for control of energy and mineral resources. It's part of a system that robs us of the resources needed for the solar transition, at great cost to people and communities worldwide, and to democracy as well as the climate.